Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to discuss about the SIP error codes, or you can simply say that the SIP error messages like 1xx, 2xx till 6xx messages. So I'm going to discuss about in little bit about these messages, what all are the messages, and I have created this presentation with a small number of messages. It's not like I have added all the messages. It's just I have added those messages which are useful mainly in the troubleshooting. So let's start it with the what all are the SIP error codes or SIP messages. As you can see it here, there are this is the category of SIP messages. So like we have six categories starting with 1xx, and that is our provisional responses. So 1xx means it can be like 100 till 199. That is 1xx, that is provisional responses, right? So the very first message which will come on your mind for the provisional responses would be 100 trying, I believe. So if you know what is SIP, how the SIP messages work, what all are the SIP messages, what is the SIP call flow, then you should know about this 100 trying. And if you are watching this video for the very first time, this video, not this video only, the SIP video for the very first time, then please go and check my other video on session initiation protocol part 1, 2, 3, and then you can come back to this video, SIP error codes, right? So 1xx provisional responses means it can contain 100 trying, 180 ringing, 183 session progress, 181, 182, everything. It will contain under 1xx provisional responses. And if there is any message which contains 1xx, that would be a provisional message. It would not be a successful, it would not be like it will not complete the transaction. The transaction would be complete only when you get a successful response or a successful message, which is coming via 2xx, which is our next thing. That is this 2xx successful responses. So 2xx, it can contain 200 OK message and any other message which we are gonna discuss it later on in the upcoming slides. Then we have this 3xx redirection responses. If your call will say to redirect it temporarily, redirect it permanently, then that would be under 3xx. Then we have this 4xx, that is a client failure response, 5xx server failure, and 6xx is global failure response. 4xx client failure response, it would be you will be getting like if the client is busy, something like 487 busy, call terminated. There are so many messages in the 4xx as well. 5xx is server failure message you will get, and 6xx is global failure. So I'm gonna discuss about all the messages a little bit. So categories of SIP message, that 1xx, these are informational messages. 2xx, that would be a success messages. 3xx, we already discussed, that is also redirection. That means redirection messages. To it's like if you want to move your call, or we can say the forward your call or the redirect your call. Not forward, we can say redirect your call to someone else. It can be temporarily redirection or it can be a permanent as well, right? Then we have this 4xx, that would be client error, server failure, and global failure, which we already discussed. So let's start with 1xx in little bit detail. So what is 1xx messages? 1xx is already, we have already discussed provisional response. So a 1xx SIP response code can be sent at any time while a connection is being established. What this means, while a connection is being established, that means whenever you are trying to establish one connection, that means whenever you are sending a first invite, that means you are trying to build a connection, trying to establish a connection. That time you will get a 1xx message. It can be 100 trying, 180 ringing, 181, 182, 183, anything. So first, if you are get sending an invite, then it will be pretty sure that you will get the very first message, which would be 100 trying message, as you can see it here. So 100 trying message. The first message here you can see is 100 trying, right? So now what's the main purpose of this 100 trying message? So as soon as you are sending an invite, if you are not getting anything from the server side, like client is sending, like let me just explain it to you like this way. So if this is your user agent client and this is your user agent server, if this client is sending 100 invite message to the server, if your server is not responding with the 100 trying, then your client, this client keeps sending the invite message again and again to the server within some interval of time that would be getting increased, like 2 seconds, 4 seconds, then 8 seconds, 16 seconds, 32 seconds. With this interval of time, your client will be sending invite messages again and again until it gets 100 trying from the server side, from the user agent server side. That's what it is written over here. I will just read it out. So 100 trying. This response indicates that the request has been received by the next hop server. So for client, the next hop server would be this user agent server, and that some unspecified action is being taken on behalf of this call. Like for an example, database is being consulted. It wants to consult it. And this response, like all other provisional responses, stops retransmissions of an invite by a user agent client. That's what I already discussed, right? It will stop the transmission as soon as you get the 100 trying. But if you are not getting 100 trying message from the server, it will again send the invite message within like after in some interval of time which is mentioned, like it is already by default that if you're not getting 100 trying after this much time, we will I will be sending the 100 invite message again, right? And the next line, like the 100 trying response is different from other provisional responses, right? Because 100 trying response will be coming as soon as it gets the invite from the client, right? Then next would be our 180 ringing message. 180 ringing. What's that 180 ringing says? So 180 ringing, as the name suggests, ringing. That means it will it will just notify the client to just ring a call, right? That means your client will hear a ringing tone in his phone, like the call is getting ring on the other end. That is 180 ringing. That means destination user agent received invite. Destination would be server in this case. That means destination user agent received invite message and is alerting user of a call. It is alerting user of a call that there is a call. It will alert. And on the client side, you will hear a ringback tone, ring, ring, like this, right? Next, we will be having 181 call is being forwarded, right? So what this means, servers can optionally send this response to indicate a call is being forwarded. So it's like if you are not available and you have configured this thing, like if I am not available or if I'm not logged in or if I am busy, my call should get forwarded. Or if I'm not available, my call should get forwarded to my cell phone number. I will configure this in my CUCM, right? If I want to forward my call, right? In that case, you will be getting this 181 call is being forwarded like this. Servers can optionally send this response to indicate your call is being forwarded to this and that, right? Next, we have this 182 queued, right? So what this 182 queued means, that means let's just take an example for this 182 queued. So we can say if your next destination party, or we can say the call party, is not available, or we can say not a permanent, it can be a temporary. If a call party is temporary unavailable, so instead of like rejecting the call, your server will take the call and hold it. What does it mean, hold it. So let's take an example. If sometimes if you call a customer care, like maybe if the customer care call is getting busy, then you will hear a prompt like all our customers are busy and the call waiting time is 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds or 15 seconds or 15 minutes, 5 minutes, like this. If you are getting this, that means your call is in queue. As soon as the agent is free, your call will get connect to that particular agent, right? That means that is 182 queued. So let me just read this out. The called party is temporarily unavailable, but the server has decided to queue the call rather than reject it. So server will not reject the call, it will queue that call. And when the callee becomes available, it will return the appropriate final status response. The reason phrase may give further details about the status of the call. The reason code would be there in the troubleshooting part in the messages. That would give you further details as well about the status. It's like just an example. For example, 5 calls queued, expected waiting time is 15 minutes, right? Then the server may issue several 182 queued responses to update the caller about the status of the queued call. That's what I gave an example. Like if you call your customer care, your call will be in queue for few minutes, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That is the example of a 182 queued message, right? Then we have this thing that is 183 session progress and 199 early dialog terminated. So let's discuss this 183 session progress first. What is 183 session progress? Let's read it out first and then I'll explain. 183 session progress response is used to convey information about the progress of the call, right? So it is telling you the progress of the call that is not otherwise classified. The reason phrase, header fields, or message body may be used to convey more details about the call progress. So maybe the thing is not clear to you about just by reading these lines. It's just a lines. Maybe you are not like convinced with these lines. What is this 183 session progress? So let me tell you. So it is just saying it is used to convey information about the progress of the call that is not otherwise classified. So if you're getting 180 ringing, that means you know there is a call and it is getting ring and you are getting a ring back. And if you are not getting a ring, but the call is saying session progress, what does it mean? That means if there is a dialer tone or caller tune, I can say caller tune is there, or is there if there is an IVR as well, then you will not hear a ring, right? So you are not hearing a ring back tone if it is getting prompted to IVR directly. You're not getting hearing a ring. So 180 ringing would be there if there is a ring back tone, or we can say if it is ringing on the other end, then you will hear a ring back. If it is not ringing, it is directly prompting. That means that can be an IVR or it can be a dialer tune. Instead of ringing, you will hear a song as well. That will be a dialer tune or caller tune, I can say, right? In that case, you should be getting something, right? And that would be a 183 session progress because that is not a 180 ringing. And you will get a 183 session progress with SDP messages. What this SDP message means? Your SDP means it will contain all the information. Like your 180 ringing will not contain any SDP messages if there is just a ring back or ringing. 183 session progress will get SDP messages as well, which will show all the details like IP address, the codecs, and all these details about that. Uh, I can say dialer tune, caller tune, or an IVR prompt, right? So if you are getting 183 session progress, that is an example of early media, right? Early media. So what early media means? Early media is you are getting a media before you are getting a 200 okay or a successful response. You are getting a media. Like If there is a caller tune, dialer tune, or an IVR prompt, that is a media. And that's what you will get it in the SDP messages, right? I hope this 183 session progress is also clear to you. Then we have next thing, that is 199 early dialog terminated. It can be used by a user agent server. This one, it can be used by user agent server 199 early dialog terminated to indicate to upstream SIP entities, including user agent client, that an early dialog has been terminated. If there is an early dialog, user agent server indicate the client that early dialog has been terminated, and that point of time you will get 199 early dialog terminated message, right? So I hope this 1xx provisional responses are clear to you, right? So let me go to the next slide, that is 2xx successful responses. It's there is not much thing in the 2xx. That's why I just written over these three only. There are so many 200 in 2xx as well, but if you want to check all the messages one by one, then you can go to RFC and then you can check it, because there are so many multiples messages, right? Then we have 2xx successful response. What this means? 2xx means response codes are used to indicate that a SIP request has been successfully processed. Why it is saying successfully processed? Let's suppose client, this one is server. This one, let me just write it down, server, and this is your client. So first there will be an invite message from client to server, right? And then your server will send 100 trying, then server will send 180 ringing or 183 anything, and then you will get a 200 OK message. 200 OK, right? That 200 OK means your request is successful. Like you send me an invite message, it can be an early offer, it can be a delayed offer as well. That depends. But as soon as server got the invite, then it will send 100 trying, 180 ringing, or 183 or any other thing, and then it will send the 200 OK. Whenever your client, when your this user agent client gets a 200 OK message, that means your request is successful, correct? After that, next message would be an acknowledgement from this client to server. Okay, I accept it. Like if there is a delay offer, then it will this your server will send SDP capabilities in the 200 OK, and then in the acknowledgement, your client will say, okay, I acknowledge, and it will negotiate, right? That was the first message, 200 OK, right? Then we have this 202 accepted message. What it means, it indicates that the request has been accepted for processing, but the processing has not been completed, right? So server accepts those messages. Server will indicate to the client that whatever you sent it to me earlier, I have accepted that and it's in processing state, right? It's under processing, but it's not yet completed. So it will send 202 accepted message to the client just for an indication that your request has been accepted for processing and it's in processing state, but it's not yet completed, right? Then we have this 204 no notification. This indicates the request was successful, but the corresponding response will not be received, right? Your server will send 204 no notification request if it is not getting anything from the client. This will indicate the request was successful, but the response is not yet received. That's why it will send 204 no notification request. Let's move on to the next one, that is 3xx redirection responses. This 3xx response gives information about the user's new location, right? That would be a redirection or alternate services that might be able to satisfy the call. So keep this thing in mind. Main messages are 1xx, that is provisional, 2xx successful, 3xx redirection. Once you have 4, 5, or 6, that means something is rejected, something is not working right. 4xx, like client error, server error, global failure, kind of this. Whenever like you are getting 487 busy, 486 terminated, something like that, right? In 3xx, there will be like 4 messages I have written over here. Like first one, we can say moved permanently. This one is moved temporarily. I already discussed in my first slide about this, moved temporarily and permanently in the redirection. 305 use proxy and 380 alternative service. So let's discuss it one by one. 301 moved permanently. That means your call is getting redirected to a permanent location. Let's read it out. The user can no longer be found at the address in the request URI. Whatever the address is mentioned in the request URI, user is no longer there. That's why it will be getting a 301 moved permanently. And requesting client should retry at the new address. It will send the new address as well, given by the contact header field. Contact header field will give you the new address for the redirection, right? And the requester should update any local directories, address book, and user location caches with the new value and redirect future requests to the address list. So once it gets a response of 301, it will contain all the information and it will get all the information from the server and it will store it in the user location cache with the new values so that if there is any request in the future, then it will get directly to the new address. It will not just send it to the old one and then redirect it. It will send it directly to the new address, right? Redirect future request to the addresses listed. 302 moved temporarily. That what that means? That means that is a temporary movement. It's not a permanent one. So the requesting client should retry the request at the new address given by the contact header field. It's just the same as of now, right? It will just retry, but that is a temporary one. The request URI of the new request uses the value of contact header field in the response. Like contact header field would be there, and this is my new temporary address. Just to retry it over there. And how we can say that is a temporary or a permanent one? It depends on the expire field. Let's check it out. The duration of the validity of the contact URI can be indicated through an expires header field or an expire parameter in the expiration time, right? And this address is only valid once and must not be cached for future transaction. Can you see the difference between this temporarily and the permanently? In the permanent, the user location cache with the new value added in that local directories, right? It will update it, but it should not be cached for future transactions in the moved temporarily message, right? Because if there is any future request, then it should be come to me because that one 302 moved was temporarily, right? If the URI cached from the contact header field fails, the request URI from the redirected request may be tried again, but that is only for a single time, one time. And the temporary URI may have become out of date sooner than the expiration time, and a new temporary URI may be available. It can happen, right? It can happen. Then we have next thing that is 305 use proxy. What that means, the requested resource must be accessed to the proxy given by the contact field, and the contact field gives the URI of proxy, right? Contact field will give you the URI of proxy, and requested resource must be accessed to the proxies given by the contact field, right? And the recipient is expected to repeat this single request via proxy. 305 responses must only be generated by servers, right? It's not much thing. Then we have this 380 alternative service. What that means? That means the call was not successful, but alternate services are available. So first time the call is not available, call is not successful, but it is saying we have alternate things as well. That means but alternative services are possible. And those alternate services are described in the message body of the response. There will be a response of 380 alternate service, and it contains the message body, which will show you the alternate services. And format for such bodies are not defined here and may be the subject of future standardization, right? Then we can move on to the 4xx client failure responses. Here, what it means, client is getting failure, right? 4xx responses are definite failure responses from a particular server. It can be from a particular server. That's why you're getting a 4xx client failure response. The client should not retry the same request without modification. If you are getting anything with 4xx messages, then you should not retry it without changing anything or without modifying anything, right? For example, adding appropriate authorization. If something is not authorized, then you will get a message of 401 unauthorized. And if you keep on sending the same thing, then you will be getting the same message again and again, right? So without modifying, do not retry it again. Just modify it first and then retry it again. However, the same request to a different server might be successful. Yeah, it can be successful to a different server because maybe at that particular point of time your next or we can say another server is available, but this server is not available. That's why you are getting the messages of 4xx, and it contains anything, right? Anything, any message. I'm saying. So let's start it with the first one. The first message that would be 400 bad request. What this means, request could not be understood due to a malformed syntax. That means syntax is not correct. That's why you will be getting a 400 bad request. And the reason phrase which would be there, it should identify the syntax problem in detail. For example, reason phrase would tell you like call ID header field is missing. That would be a reason. Like in detail, you will be getting in the reason phrase. And 400 bad request means it could be a malformed syntax. Syntax is not correct. Then we have this 401 unauthorized, right? If once we are getting this 401 unauthorized, what that means? The request requires user authentication. And if you are not modifying anything and retrying the same, then you will be getting again 401 unauthorized, right? And this response is issued by servers and registrars. Then we have 403 forbidden. What this means forbidden? Server understood the request, but it is refusing to fulfill it. Why it is saying refusing to fulfill it? Because he understood the request, but it is refusing it. Sometimes, but not always, we can say this means the call has been rejected by the receiver as well, right? So server understood the request, what it is saying, but it doesn't want to take it. It's just refusing. That means the call has been rejected by the receiver. Then we have 404 not found. Not found, what that means? Server has definitive information that the user doesn't exist at the domain specified in the request URI. Right? This status is returned if the domain in the URI doesn't match any of the domains handled by the recipient of that request. So if it is not matching anything, then obviously you will be getting not found error, like 404 not found. Then we have 405 method not allowed. What that means? The method specified in the request line is understood. Method is understood, but it is not allowed for the address defined by the request URI, right? Then we have 406 not acceptable. The resource identified by the request is only capable of generating responses entities that have content, but not acceptable according to the accept header field sent in the request. So 406 not acceptable, it will not accept it. Proxy authentication required, that would be a 407. This request requires user authentication and this response is issued by proxies. Request timed out, what that means, couldn't find the user in time, like there would be a timer, but we are not, if a server is not able to find that particular user, then it would be a request timeout. Server could not produce a response within a suitable amount of time. For example, if it could not determine the location of the user in time, the client may repeat the request without modifications at any later time. So if it is getting 408 request timeout, that means it was just searching and searching, but server was unable to find it out the location of the user. Then your client will send it again without the modification, because there is no need for the modification here. It's just a timed out request. If you're sending it again, then it will check it out again. Why we cannot send it the same response in the 401 unauthorized or 407 proxy authentication required? Because if you are sending the same request, if you're retrying the same without the modification, then it will just give you an error. Okay, not authorized, not authorized, not authorized. Because it found like the location and everything and all other details, but it needs an authentication, right? Then we have more 4xx messages, that is 480 temporarily unavailable. Temporarily unavailable. So what that means, the callie's end system was contacted successfully, the end system, but the call is currently unavailable. And why it is unavailable? Maybe the call is not logged in. Maybe the call is busy on another call. Like, for example, it's not logged in, but in a state that precludes communication, or has activated do not disturb feature as well. Like, user has been contacted, but he can't take the call. Maybe he's not logged in, maybe he's not available, maybe he's activated the do not disturb mode. Then you will be getting this 480 temporarily unavailable. And this response may indicate a better time as well to call in the retry after header field. Once you're getting retry after, that means it may be like a retry after header field. It contains, can be like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, anything like the seconds. The user could also be available elsewhere. The reason phrase should indicate a more precise cause as to why the callee is unavailable. The reason phrase will tell you why your callee is not available. And this value should be available settable by the user agent. And status 486 busy here may be used to more precisely indicate a particular reason for the call failure. This 486 busy here, it can be there as well, because it will tell you the particular reason for the call failure also, right? Then we have this. The status is also returned by a redirect or proxy server. It can be from the redirect server or proxy server that recognize the user identified by the request URI but doesn't currently have a valid forwarding location, right? Then we have this thing that is 481 call or transaction does not exist, right? What that means, server received a request, but it is not matching any dialogue or transaction. Server received a request that doesn't match any dialogue or transaction. Then we have this 482 loop detected. That means server has detected a loop. That means it is just roaming like this one. Loop is already created. It is just forwarding or sending these requests in a loop. Next we have that is 483 too many hoops. Too many hops actually. It just rhymed with the loop, and then that's why too many hoops. So it's 483 too many hops. That means max forward header has reached the value 0. So what is max forward header? If you check, if you see the debug messages and like when it contains the headers, in that header you will get a one header that is the max forward header, and it contains like max forward would be like 70. That means that call can go up to a maximum of 70 hops, maximum of 70 destinations. If that is 0, then you will be getting this 483 too many hops. Then we have this 486 busy here. That means the collie's end system was contacted successfully, and server contacted I believe you know the 486 busy here because we already discussed here. So end system was contacted successfully, and once you get a 486 busy here, that means that person is busy. And if you're getting 486 busy, it will contain why the user is unavailable at that particular point of time. But the call is currently not willing or able to take additional calls at this end system, right? The response may indicate a better time to call in the retry after header fields, which we already discussed. User could also be available, such as through a voicemail service, right? And status 600 busy everywhere, right? Status 600 busy everywhere should be used in the client knows that no other end system will be able to accept this call. If you are getting this status 600 busy everywhere, that means no one is available to take that call or to accept that call, right? Then we have this 487 request terminated. It's just the name indicates the request is gonna terminate it. Request was terminated by a buy or cancel request. The response is never returned for a cancel request itself. And then we have 488 not acceptable. I believe I already created one video on this one particular message. That is 488 not acceptable here, right? Now, what that means, let's just read it out. The response has the same meaning as 606, not acceptable, but only applies to specific resource addressed by the request URI and the request may succeed elsewhere. The message body containing a description of media capabilities may be present in the response, which is formatted according to the accept header field in the invite. The same as the message body in a 200 OK response to an options request, right? Let's move on to the next, that is 5xx error message. 5xx is server failure response. What that means, 5xx responses relate to server error issues. 5xx responses relate to server error issues and are mostly generated by the likes of proxy servers. This is a server failure. Keep in mind 5xx is server failure. And it's mostly generated by the likes of proxy server, location server, and the redirect server, right? And in this, we are gonna discuss about this 500 server internal, 501 not implemented, bad gateway, service unavailable, or timed out. It's like the already the name indicates everything here, right? Like this 500 server internal error. That means the server encountered an unexpected condition that prevented it from fulfilling the request, right? And the client may display the specific error condition and may retry the request after several seconds. This is server internal error. If the condition is temporary, server may indicate when the client may retry the request using retry after header field. So server will tell you all the details in retry header field, like how after how much time you can retry that request, because as of now it's internal error from the server. Then we have this 501 not implemented. So here the server does not support the functionality required to fulfill the request, right? Server does not support the functionality required to fulfill the request. This is the appropriate response when server does not recognize the request method and is not capable of supporting it for any of the use, right? Then it will show you 501 not implemented. And note that a 405 method not allowed is sent when the server recognizes the request method, but that method is not allowed or supported, right? Here it doesn't recognize as well. The request method is not capable of supporting it. In 405 method not allowed, server recognize the request, but method is not allowed, right? You will get 405 once the server recognize the request, but method not allowed. You will get 501 not implemented if server doesn't recognize the request method and is also not capable of supporting it. Then we have this 502 bad gateway. Server is acting as a gateway or proxy and receive an invalid response from downstream server while attempting to fulfilling the request. That means that is bad gateway. 503 service unavailable. That means server is temporarily unable to process the request due to temporary overloading or maintenance. If any maintenance is going on or any overloading as well, then you will be getting 503 service unavailable. And your server may indicate when the client should retry the request. That would be in retry header field, retry after header field. If not retry after is given, that means the client must act as if it had received a 500 server internal error response, right? and a client proxy USC receiving 503 service unavailable should attempt to forward the request to an alternate server, right? If you're getting this one, then it will send the request to an alternate server. It should not forward any other request to this particular server which sends the 503 service unavailable for the duration specified, if present. Servers may refuse the connection or drop the request instead of responding with 503. It can be like refuse the connection directly by not sending 503 service unavailable. Maybe it will send you the 500 server internal error. Then we have this 504 server timeout, right? We have 504 server timeout. The server did not receive a timely response from an external server it accessed in attempting to process the request. There would be a 408 request timeout as well. This is server timeout. 408 should be used instead if there was no response within the period specified in the expire setter field from the upstream server, right? This is from the external, this is from the upstream server. Then we have 505 version not supported. The server does not support or refuses to support the SIP protocol version that was used in the request. Server is indicating that it is unable or unwilling to complete the request using the same version as the client other than with this error message. Right? It can be sending version not supported. Then we have the last one, that is 6xx global failure responses. Right? Finally, the 6xx response code, it is particularly related to the global error issue. It's globally issue. It's not a internal, it's not with the any of one of the server, it's the global, right? And here we are gonna discuss about 600 busy everywhere, decline, doesn't exist and not acceptable, and unwanted also. So 600 busy everywhere. That means the callee's end system was contacted successfully, but the callee is busy, doesn't wish to take the call at this point of time. Response may indicate a better time in the retry header, which is already there, which we already discussed. If the callee doesn't wish to reveal the reason for declining the call, the callee uses status code 603 decline instead. This one, if callee doesn't want to tell you why am I busy, I don't want to tell you that why am I busy, right? Then it will send 603 decline. It will just decline it. The status response is returned only if the client knows that no other endpoint such as voicemail or any other thing will answer the request. Then you will get this one. Or otherwise you can get 486 busy as well, should be returned. 603 decline, you already know if caller doesn't want to tell you why am I busy. Let's read it out. Caller's machine was contacted successfully, but the user doesn't wish or cannot participate. Response may indicate a better time. This is status response returned only if the client knows that no other endpoint will answer the request. 604 doesn't exist anywhere. Server has authoritative information that the requested user is not exist anywhere. Then you will get 604 doesn't exist anywhere. 606 not acceptable. That means user's agent was contacted successfully. 606 not acceptable. That means user agent was contacted successfully, but some aspects of SDP such as requested media, bandwidth or style were not acceptable. Means agent successfully contacted, but the SDP messages which contains the SD messages, bandwidth or addressing style, that is not acceptable by the agent. Then you will get 606 not acceptable response. What it means? It means user wishes to communicate, like I want to communicate with you, but the session is not supported, like all the things are not supported by me, like but cannot adequately support it the session described. And 606 not acceptable may contain a list of reasons in a warning header field describing why the SDP cannot be supported, and this status response is returned only if the client knows that no other endpoint will answer the request. So all the 6xx messages will come if the client knows that no other endpoint is available to answer it. 606 607, sorry, unwanted. That means The cold party did not want this call from the calling party. Future attempts from the calling party are likely to be similarly rejected. It means you are like you are just blocking the call on your cell phone. It's just the same. You are blocking it from one of the particular caller, one of the particular calling party. It's just the same. Any if there is any request in future on your cell phone from the same number, it will get rejected automatically, right? Here also the same. Cold party did not want this call from the calling party, and the future attempts from the calling party are likely to be similarly rejected. Then you will get this 607 unwanted message, right? So I hope these 1xx till 6xx messages are clear to you. I will try to debug the messages, debug CSS messages with the help of this command. I will check the messages and I will try to troubleshoot any of the call, or maybe I will just let you know how to troubleshoot it, what all are the messages header fields, and how you can troubleshoot it actually. I will try to make one video on that as well. But I hope this video is clear to you. These all messages are clear to you. If you have any doubts, any queries, just let me know in the comment section. I will surely reply it. It might be that I will reply a little bit late, but I will surely reply to your messages or comments in the comment section, right? And if you want to schedule a time with me, just you can go to this top meta tire or one underscore Vimani. And if you want to purchase any membership, then you can go and click on the join button and you can check it out, right? And if you really like this video and learn something, then please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe it as well. And don't forget to press the bell icon so that you will get notifications of all my upcoming videos, right? Thank you.